Hello and welcome back, adventurers. In our last video about this topic, we talked about how great it is to be a puppeteer. But today, I'm going to talk about the Reaper instead. Just like last time, I'll talk about how it works with the base features, as well as focus spells, feats, all aspects of the class. Hopefully, this isn't a surprise, but there are certain features, focus spells, and feats that really aid the Reaper in what they're trying to do, as there should be, just like we saw with the Puppeteer. Really quickly, though, let's recap what the Reaper gets. So if you choose this Fatal Method at level 1, you're going to get, first of all, Reaper's Edge. This will make you trained in martial weapons and medium armor. You'll also become expert in martial weapons at 11 and medium armor at 13. Then we have Thrall Teamwork. Once per turn, after you cast Great Thrall, you can make a melee strike against a creature within melee reach of you. As a free action, they just have to be adjacent to at least one of your Thralls. This is clearly the Gish Fatal Method, right? Reaper's Edge gives us that martial weapon access that we otherwise wouldn't have. Of course, you could have just taken it through a general feat as well. I'm not saying there is no other way to handle it. And maybe more importantly, the medium armor proficiency, though, again, you could have gotten that through a general feat as well. With the martial weapons and medium armor, you can go with a strength build, which is otherwise pretty hard to do because doing a strength build when you just have light armor is rough. Though you can still, go with a dex build if you want to, including ranged builds. But like with the Puppeteer, you might find more value with the Thrall boost than you do actually the other boost. In Puppeteer's case, it was the once a day extra focus point. In your case, of course, it's medium armor and weapon proficiency. In this case, we get a free strike. Well, a strike as a free action after we use Create Thrall. And that's awesome, right? Basically, like a flurry of blows between you and your Thrall if you want to. So you summon one Thrall, have it strike, and then you attack. Cool. But not really. It's almost certain that you're going to hit harder than your Thrall will with whatever weapon you choose. So the way it works, though, is your strike comes after Create Thrall, which means Create Thrall will resolve all of its stuff it does, and then you'll get to strike. Well, your thralls add to your multiple attack penalty, which means that the thrall will always attack with its highest chance to hit, and you will not. So that does hurt a little bit if you want to use it that way. You don't have to use it that way though, because you can summon two thralls, not have one attack, or summon one and have it move, which seems odd. So let's say you summon two, one on the other side of an enemy you're next to, and one somewhere else. Then you just make a strike for free, and you still have your two thralls, and you still have two actions left on the turn. So yeah, I think there's good ways to use this. I'm a little sad that you can't make your strike in the middle. They didn't actually call it a free action. Uh, you can't make your strike in the middle. You have to wait until after it resolves, as I read it. If you could attack and then have that thrall make a strike with multiple attack penalty, yeah, I think that'd be better. But we're doing the best we can here, and you really don't want to take any debuffs to your chance to hit, given that you are still a caster, right? Not even a near martial. You are a caster, so you're going to be behind on your chance to hit. And at level 1, you're going to be at the same place that a near martial would be, but as you go up in level, you're actually going to be behind that, right? Because your weapon proficiency won't scale as quickly as theirs will. So things to keep in mind as we get into this, but I still think there's very cool builds to do with this, and you'll see some things that'll help out with a lot of this. Anyway, after that, we have the other features of the class, starting with spellcasting, of course. At the Gish, you will absolutely take advantage of spells, but likely you'll use different spells than the Puppeteer, at least some different ones. Sometimes you might use the same ones. I think that Reapers, assuming you want to make strikes most turn, will probably lean into spells that aid you in that. You may still lean into control spells because they're just really good because you want to hinder enemies or you want to debuff them. So could take advantage of those pretty easily. That's all still in here. You're still going to have your maximum, spell casting DC and chance to hit, all that. However, this can also be a massive boost to your martial abilities. Even at level 1, we have spells like Runic Weapon, which is really good for levels 1 through 3, and then it drops off. Bless, if you're just going to be willing to sustain a spell, but keep up your chance to hit with that one there. And Sure Strike. On top of that, there are great spells that help that are sustained, right? You might take one action casting something large and then just sustain it because you still get two actions to move and strike. Yes, it may be harder to create thralls unless you're not having to move. You can create thralls, strike, and sustain, but it might be worth it to sustain a spell that way. So there's lots of options of how to use spellcasting along with your martial abilities that are going to be really valuable, but it probably looks different than what a puppeteer is doing. I mentioned in the other video that I felt Puppeteer might get more from both Necrotic Bomb and Thrall Charge, and I still think that's true in general sense, but Necrotic Bomb does have one great synergy with Reapers. It's a save spell. Keep in mind that just because you're a Reaper doesn't mean that you have to be a melee Reaper either, but even if you are, it might make sense if you're creating two thralls and then getting a strike as you create the two thralls. You center the other one somewhere where blowing it up might hit two enemies. Great. No multiple attack penalty on that save. So, big advantage for you when you get to strike and use something explosive like that. Yeah, I think that's pretty solid. Mastery of Life and Death has interesting possibilities for you as well. Not only what we just talked about with Necrotic Bomb, changing the damage type there, and of course, you get harm for free. Not sure you'll use harm as much as a puppeteer might, but anything else that does void damage, you're still going to get a lot out of. And you're still going to be able to use those spells and effects that cause that kind of damage. So, yeah, being able to alter this, still valuable. I just don't know that you'll lean into the harm side as much as a puppeteer might, but other sides of what it offers up, absolutely. Reapers can still get a lot from the base features, but let's go ahead and talk about Grim Fascinations where things get really interesting. So, first we have Blood. Again, I think it's a solid choice for a Reaper. I think I might have underrated it when I did my rating, actually. Maybe it should have been an A. But anyway, if you're in melee, you're going to take a decent amount of damage. The Thrall enhancement means you're getting hit points back. Yeah, you're not creating as many Thralls, but you might need the hit points more than a Puppeteer does, so you're probably getting a lot of value out of that side. Plus, you're probably putting your Thralls a lot more in melee, where they might die from various reasons, or might just be in the way of a creature that it might swipe one out of the way just because it needs to get by. I think there's a decent chance your Thralls die a fair amount of the time. The focus spell by itself doesn't necessarily do much for you, but at least, it's damage and, could occur multiple rounds, so you don't have to use actions every turn necessarily to set up spells. So that's nice. But combo it with the level 12, and yeah, you're going to get a lot out of this because again, you're going to take more damage than a puppeteer does, probably on average. So you need that healing. This is just healing on top of healing. Yeah, you're going to feel pretty happy about that. And again, you're just hard to kill. Then we have Bone, and it has a focus spell that may or may not be easy to slide into your playstyle, right? Because it's two actions to deal just straight damage. But it does give you a ranged option. You may not always be able to get up to enemies that you want to. Probably pretty easy for you to set this up, and it gives you an option that's different from Necrotic Bomb because, that's an AoE. Sometimes you just need to do a line so you don't hit allies. So it's at least there. The Thrall enhancement probably isn't that important to you. Yes, you could command a Thrall to move to help you in flank, but you can just use one action to create Thralls instead and just have one created to flank with you, which is probably the better choice. As for the level 12 feat, this is tailor made for the Reaper. The movement speed increase means that you can keep up with or even outpace enemies, which is huge in melee martial combat. Then the slashing or piercing resistance will come up constantly if you're in combat with brutish or speedy enemies in melee. Just for that alone, this is worth a look, but only if you're going to get high enough level for that to matter. With Flesh, while the level 12 feat from Bone may have been a perfect fit, the whole subclass here was built for Reaper in my mind. The focus spell makes a creature off guard, even on a success. So at the very least, we get an AC reduction, so you can land those strikes, because you do need every bonus you can get to land your strikes, again, because you're falling behind. And then, of course, slow, if it lands, is obviously really powerful. Taking an action away from a creature feels really good. It's going to reduce its options. The Thrall improvement for creating difficult terrain can actually be used to make it a challenge for enemies to get out of melee range with you. Keep in mind that creatures cannot step into difficult terrain, which means already they can't step through your Thrall because your Thrall is difficult terrain. They just shove it aside, but it's still difficult terrain. They can't do that. When it dies, it creates difficult terrain, adds another layer of difficulty. So it's hard for enemies to get away from you. And that's really valuable. Of course, you can also use it up just to funnel enemies towards you if that's what you're trying to do. Then we've got another strong level 12 feat here. This time it's designed for you specifically, assuming that you are a melee Reaper, which of course you don't have to be. Increasing your hit points is good for anybody, but again, you're going to be taking more attacks, so extra good for you. Then you've got the Sickened One, right? Sickened One, whenever you destroy a Thrall, you're trying to make creatures in melee with you. Second one, you're going to have creatures in melee with you a lot of the time. Second one is massive. Assuming that you are flanking with another thrall of yours, or maybe you've just made it off guard or whatever, that gives a -3 to AC between circumstance and status penalties, and that bridges the gap, right? That puts you right on line with martial characters. So yeah, I do think this one is fantastic for a Reaper. And finally, we have Spirit. This has bonuses that absolutely help a Reaper out. You may or may not be too worried about the support when you roll, but even just healing yourself by using the focus spell, that can be handy. The Thrall enhancement may fall short for you, as you might not want your Thralls striking too often thanks to multiple attack penalty, but if you do have to make them strike, it's nice to change it up. The resistances from level 12 feet, yep, great. Along with being able to travel through enemies, really solid for setting up strikes. So again, the level 12 feet is going to feel good for you here. Honestly, as a melee reaper, it'd be hard for me to not go with flesh, but blood still feels like a solid second choice, and the others are going to feel fine if you choose them as well. There's no bad choice. Going back to my rankings, there's really no bad choice. So just feel out what fits best for your playstyle. Just like with Puppeteer, we have special feats that are only available to the Reaper, this time at level 6, like before, but also level 20 is our second one. So at level 6, we get the feat Bind Heroic Spirit that gives us the focus spell, Bind Heroic Spirit. This is 2 actions, has a 30-foot range, you target one Thrall, and it lasts for a minute. You're going to destroy the Thrall and gain a +1 status bonus to your attack rolls and saving throws for that 1 minute. Whenever you land a critical hit with a strike, you're going to create a Thrall in an open space adjacent to the creature you just critically hit. And at heightened to 6th rank, because remember this comes in at 3rd rank, at heightened to 6th rank, this becomes a +2 status bonus to your attack rolls and saving throws. This feels like it's almost a necessary buff to make. You're a Reaper, you're behind with your scaling. You really need anything that'll boost you up. This feels like that. You will never get to master in your martial weapons, right? That's never going to happen, which hurts. I think they could have made it really high level you got to master, but fine, whatever. But anyway, when you would need this to be at master for you, when you're, getting a +2, that's when it would line up to have you kick in to match martials with that higher level. There are a few issues here though. First, this is 2 actions to set up on your first round of combat, and that hurts a lot. I actually think it would have been just fine to make this 1 action to help you keep up more easily and keep doing what you want to do, so you can cover ground, strike, and have this up. Unfortunately, the relationship between this, Crate Thrall, and striking doesn't work the best on our first round, and I don't love that that plays out in that way. Still, I think it's an important grave spell to have, and yeah, I think I would still very much have it. Then we have the level 20 feet Final Union. You have to know Bind Heroic Spirit to take it, which is why this is for Reapers only. Once you take this, you are passively, constantly under the effects of 10th rank Bind Heroic Spirit. You decide if you and the spirit remain separate entities or if you combine into one. There's no actual gameplay effect in that side of it, but just maybe a cool RP thing. You gain the additional lore feat, and the lore is for something the spirit knew in life, which by default the game says is warfare lore, which is pretty reasonable. If you would fall unconscious, you don't fall prone and drop items. Instead, the spirit takes control of you. This doesn't give you your hit points back. It's like, it's piloting your body. I mean, you still are the one saying what's happening here. Like, the GM doesn't take control of your character, but instead the spirit is piloting you even though you're at 0 hit points. If you would die, which might happen if you're still going around with 0 hit points, if you die, the spirit puppets your body for up to 1 minute, unless your body is destroyed. There are effects that turn you to dust. While you are dead, you are immune to bleed, death effects, disease, healing. That's an important one. Non-lethal attacks, poison, void, doom, drain, fatigue, sickened, unconscious. Lots of things, right? You become an object with 200 hit points, and your break threshold is 100. When broken, you are slowed 1. If your body is destroyed, because you finally get taken all the way down to 0 here, it must be mended with a crafting DC 45 check for 8 hours before you can be resurrected. Or somebody could use like the spell Remake on you or the Wish Ritual. This one is bizarre. So you will get the most value out of this, of the smallest pieces of it, which is the Bind Heroic Spirit passive, right? That's most of what you're getting out of this. Yeah, the other stuff comes along, but keep in mind, this is at level 20. So that doesn't feel excessive to get like free Bind Heroic Spirit. Being able to fight at 0 hit points. That's pretty cool. And keep in mind that you only become immune to healing once you're dead. So when the spirit takes control and you're unconscious at 0 hit points, you can still be healed right out of that state. And that's important. Then the whole dead puppet thing is kind of nuts. Anyone ever seen Stardust by chance? This gave me Stardust vibes. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. It's kind of like that. This can certainly help keep the party going, right? Help them from wiping. If you happen to go down first, usually when somebody topples, it gets really dicey. But if you're just right back into it or never stopped, then okay, your allies can keep going. Sure, somebody's got to figure out how to resurrect you, but you're level 20. Somebody can resurrect you probably, or you know somewhere that you can get resurrected, whatever that looks like. So, very cool. But I think the important part is Bind Heroic Spirit. Having said that, this is level 20. I think this could have been level 18 and helped a little bit, but still, that's super late. So, you're not going to get a ton of this just because it's so late in the game. They probably could have taken out part of this or altered a little bit to make it level 16, at least make it more likely people would see it, but that's fine. This is still very cool. Okay, so those are your specific feats for the Reaper, but are there other feats that fit the Reaper best? Of course, or I wouldn't have just prompted that question. So let's go ahead and dive into what I think are some Reaper specific feats. And I don't have to mention the level 1 feat necessarily that you take, another focus spell because I think it's good for everybody. But anyway, at level 2, we have Draining Strike. This is one action. Once per turn, you can make this strike. Interesting, it doesn't have Flourish, just says once per turn. If it hits, you can destroy a thrall within 10 feet to deal additional 1d6 spirit damage on that strike and heal for the spirit damage amount. So you get a little healing, you do a little extra damage. At level 10 and 18, you can destroy an additional thrall, meaning at level 10, 1 additional, at 18, 2 additional, to add 1d6 spirit damage per thrall you destroy. It's a nice damage lift with some healing. It's not crazy damage, but it's nice. Once again, making this a difficult class to take down is a big part of it. Just keep in mind that many thralls you're going to need at high level because you have to then create a whole lot of thralls to do this. But I think it's very reasonable to do it. The other little piece here is once per turn, you're making the strike. If you hit, you're destroying it. If you do crit, you're doing double that damage. So just keep in mind, very cool. Of course, you're not waiting till afterward to choose to destroy the thrall. You're destroying it as part of the strike if you hit. And if you only destroy if you hit, which is important. At level 2, we also have Undead Creator. You learn the Create Undead ritual and can complete it by yourself, but you have to fill the requirements for both parties that would normally do it. I know this seems kind of like a thing that would be just as good on either Fatal Method, but I actually think it's better on the Reaper. So many undead creatures are melee by design or have abilities that benefit from being in combat alongside you, that having a constant companion to take damage away from you and to flank with and to deal some decent damage that isn't using your multiple attack penalty, all of that feels really good for the Reaper, a melee Reaper specifically. That brings up to Body Shield. Maybe I shouldn't have brought it up for Puppeteer because it's just as good, if not better, for I don't know. It's good for both. It's just really good. The challenge for Reaper is that the thrall has to be adjacent, and you may move around more. So this might be difficult for melee Reaper, whereas it's a lot easier for ranged. At the same time, you will be attacked more often, so you'll get the value from it more often. So yeah, I think it's really good for Reapers, but for different reasons than it was more like, it was emergency button there. Here it'll be just part of your regular actions. Then we have Osteo Armaments. This is level 4, one action. You get to create a +1 striking weapon of your choice that you're proficient with. It even creates ammo if you choose something that requires ammunition. If you destroy an adjacent thrall when using this, when creating the weapon, it's going to gain the decaying, or at level 15, the greater decaying runes added onto it. At 10th level, and as you go up in higher levels, even above 10th, it's going to gain the appropriate runes, right? So at 10th, 12th, and so on, it's going to gain the appropriate property runes that you would expect a weapon of that level to have. This is critical if you're in a campaign where the GM doesn't hand you or allow you a lot of upgraded weapon runes on time, right? You'll get them or you have to buy them if you can buy them, but it might be hard. But I don't think that happens much. I think most GMs are making them available to you. Some even use the variant rule that just upgrades your stuff for you. So that may not be the craziest use here. I really like it though as an emergency button too. Sometimes you might lose access to your weapon, or yours doesn't fit the current situation, or you just need to like hurl something at somebody. Yeah, this gives you an option, right? Oh, I need a thrown weapon. Boom, create a thrown weapon, throw it. Awesome. So I think there's great ways to use this. I think it's cool in what it does, and it's obviously tailor made for the Reaper. So I felt like I had to bring it up, but I also don't think it's a bad idea to bring it up. Will this be the most important thing ever? Probably not. But sometimes it'll just be the right answer, right? Even sometimes you just don't want to get all the way up in melee with something that hits super hard. It's got a 5 foot reach, and you just need that reach weapon so you can strike and get away. This can give you that. That brings us to Bone Burst at level 6. This is a reaction. So it's like Reactive Strike, only your Thrall takes the reaction and it's related to your Thrall. So creatures making the right actions and moving away from your Thrall can trigger this. Your Thrall doesn't really strike, it explodes. And the creature then has to make a reflex save against 2d10 piercing damage, 3d10 at level 12, and 4d10 at level 18. This isn't huge damage, but it does give you something similar to Reactive Strike in a way, but it's just weaker in a lot of ways than Reactive Strike. There is an advantage to it being tied to a Thrall, though, because ranged Reapers can still get something out of it, right? You've got a Thrall adjacent to an enemy, that enemy moves away, you can still blow it up perfectly fine. So it works in situations where you're not in melee where you wouldn't be able to make a reactive strike. Finally, if you're in melee and you used a thrall to flank with you, it's going to be pretty difficult for an enemy to get away from you and not trigger this because, assuming you're flanking, right, they're going to have to step to a side. And if they're stepping to a side, they didn't get away from being adjacent to your thrall. So one step and then run doesn't work. They could still blow up. And they can't step backwards through your thrall because it's difficult terrain. So you've actually set up a challenging situation for an enemy to get away without being able to trigger this. So they might just have to stay and fight you, which might be exactly what you want. Anyway, or it might force another enemy to come destroy your thrall so that that enemy can get away, which is a great situation. So if an enemy ever takes a strike against a thrall, awesome. They just wasted an action. Love it. At level 8, we have Wings of Bone and Sinew. This is one action. Once per hour, you destroy a thrall within 30 feet to gain 30 feet of flight for 1 minute. At level 16, you no longer can only do it once per hour, and it lasts until you dismiss it. So at 16, permanent flight. Yep, flight is good, especially for a melee character. A great fit for a Reaper. Also, I love the idea of wielding a scythe, having big bony wings, with like leathery sinew between them. And yeah, it just sounds awesome. Then we have Endless Return at level 12. You have an extra reaction every round for Inevitable Return. Keep in mind, this is what brings thralls back when you kill creatures. Well, when a creature dies within range of you, you create thralls with this reaction. Since you don't create an extra thrall with Create Thrall, you need as many thralls as you can get. Yes, you might have other reactions fighting for this one, but the other ones are more situational. This one you're going to use all the time as long as creatures are falling. And you're probably going to be within 30 feet of a dying creature. That's a problem that the puppeteer might have, is given where they want to set up, they may not always be within range of enemies when they die. You probably will be. So yeah, getting, two thralls outside of your turn every turn, or just one and getting to use another reaction, that's going to feel really huge for you, fueling everything you're trying to do. Then we have Blood Pool at level 14. This is a reaction. I brought up a lot of reactions here. There are a lot of good ones. When a creature with blood dies or takes bleed damage, you can create a pool of blood in an adjacent space to that creature. When an ally enters the space, they can use the blood to heal as a free action. The healing is equal to your level. As I read it, you can't heal from this because it specifies an ally, which feels a little off to me. I feel like you should be able to, but that's fine. This is about the best way a Reaper can actually offer support to an ally, though, especially melee martial allies. It's a decent amount of healing, right? When you get it, it's 14 health, and you can do it pretty often, assuming you're fighting things with blood. So I feel like you should feel good about this choice, and it can really help out your teammates, especially ones that are trying to help flank with you and things like that. And finally, at level 16, we have Desperate Revival. This is a reaction as well. When you would hit 0, you remain at 1 hit point instead. Then, all creatures in 60 feet have to make a Fortitude save against your spell DC. On a critical success, nothing happens. On a success, that creature takes half your level in void damage. It's void damage, keep that in mind. Keep in mind, we can make it vitality, so we can still hit undead. Fail, full level of void damage, and crit fail, double your level as void damage. You then heal for the damage dealt by this, up to half your max, but that's a lot. Does this hurt allies? Yeah, absolutely. But unless you have everyone down low, you can look at it as them donating some hit points, just a little bit each, to bring you back to half, rather than you knock down. I don't know a single party who'd be upset about that, unless they're going to drop as well. If you are a melee reaper, you are likely to hit all sorts of enemies with this. 60 feet is insane. You probably hit every enemy with this, as well as most, if not all, allies. So this could be a ton of healing. And yeah, already you're kind of hard to drop. You combo this up with one of the subclasses that makes you harder to kill. You're just so hard to take out. And they're gonna try, and then they're gonna get hurt for it, which is awesome. And that brings us to the focus spells. So yeah, there's a definitely a few focus spells I feel like are a great fit for the Reaper. You'll notice that as we talk about these, they're generally all of them are one action focus spells, and that's very much on purpose. Because again, you're trying to strike every single round, so you want to have more actions free for yourself. But these all play with what you do really, really well. At level 1, we have Deathly Scream. This is probably the least impactful of the ones in my mind, but I wanna bring it up anyway. So, 1 action, 30-foot range, you're gonna target 1 thrall, and there's a will save involved. So, what you're gonna do is you're going to destroy the thrall, right? And then every creature within a 5-foot emanation of that target thrall takes a D4 mental damage depending on its will save. So, crit success, nothing, success, half damage. Fail, full damage, and is frightened 1. And a crit fail, target is takes double damage and frightened 2, and then heightened +1. This adds another D4. The damage here isn't good. That's not what I'm here for. What I'm here for is the fact that you can put frightened onto enemies, potentially a couple if they're right around a thrall. So you drop a thrall, you're flanking with one, but it's got 2 creatures right adjacent because they're both trying to attack you. Boom, they take a little bit of damage and they both become frightened on a fail. Yeah, it's a will save, so keep in mind, melee attacking enemies probably aren't as good at their will saves, so that has a better chance of going off. You're still a caster, so your spell save DC is really high. Yeah, I think this is a great combo, and it again is just one action, so you can get the most out of it and still do everything else you need to do. Just a nice one at level 1 to give you a decent option to use up your focus points with something that won't hurt your action economy. Then we go up to our level 6 feat that gives us our focus rank 3 spell, Bloody Tendrils. This is a range of 30 feet as well, and they last for a minute. So here what you're doing is you're creating 3 medium-sized thralls, and these are shaped like bloody tendrils. Crazy, right? The tendrils are immune to physical damage, and they cannot move. So you're building them stationary. Keep in mind, you're a melee reaper when I'm talking about this. A ranged reaper would struggle a little bit more, but whatever. The tendrils strike has a reach of 10 feet, and we know that we don't generally like our thralls to strike because of multiple attack penalty, but here we go. Whenever an enemy ends its turn within reach of one of your tendrils, the tendril lashes out, attacking them, dealing 1d12 bludgeoning damage with a basic reflex save. So you get to position these in such a way that they play with you and make it hard for your enemies to get away from you and get away from them or come up and attack you because then you're going to get hit by one of them. Anyway, heighten +3, then the number of thralls the spell can create increases by 1, and they do another d12 of damage. Eventually, yeah, you don't get to go up a lot, right? So this is heightened 3, so it's not till you're level 11 that you're creating 4 of these that are doing 2d12. Again, once you've set this up, if you do it right, this is just kind of passive damage that's also creating challenges for all of the creatures to move around you. I like that. I like kind of creating a weird situation for enemies, have to decide if they're willing to take extra damage, just come up and attack you. And then if they get away, they have to get far away. I think it's cool. I think you can position well. I think there's a way to use this creatively on the battlefield. Then we have the focus rank 7 spell, Recurring Nightmare. This one I really like. So you're creating a ghostly thrall, and it's a lot harder to kill. So you're going to create it within range, within that 60 feet, and you can create it even in a space that is occupied by a creature. Unlike other thralls, the nightmare can share its space with a creature, and creatures can move through it and all that. It doesn't like take up physical space. If it's summoned into or ends its movement in a shared space with a creature, that creature has to make a will save or become a frightened 1 or frightened 2 on a crit fail. and that is an emotion, fear, and mental effect. The thrall has a fly speed of 60 feet, and it remains airborne at the end of the turns, even if it didn't fly, because it's just this ghostly thrall. The thrall's strikes deal void damage and must target a creature in the thrall's space, so you have to be up in them, which you want to do anyway because you want the frighten. When you use thrall charge, if you do, then this deals another 2d6 on top of what thrall charge normally adds to the strike damage. If this thrall is destroyed, you can sustain the spell to bring it back where you want within range. And then heightened to 8th rank, then the extra damage from thrall charge goes to 3d6, which is the part you don't care about. At least not as a Reaper, right? Why do I love this? As a Reaper, just throw this in the spot of the enemy you are fighting. Frighten them. Help with that status debuff, right? Anything you can do to help yourself out is gonna feel good. The fact that you can just bring it back if it dies for that whole minute, yeah, that's gonna feel good. If you need to move, one action can get this thing way further than you can go, so you just send it right next to the next creature you have to fight. Maybe you just need to send it to a creature that an ally is fighting to try to frighten that one. This is a really cool thing you can do. I love this. I think it works particularly good for a Reaper because it helps you out as well as allies. I mean, it always helps having things frightened, but yeah, you don't mind because you're not, creating as many thralls as a puppeteer does. If you have one thrall that's really hard to kill, that might be a great advantage, and you can still have other thralls out that you're creating to flank with. So you can still create thralls with, you want to flank with when you're striking and frighten and all that. It all combines together really nicely. And the final one I've got here for you is Skeletal Lancers. Also, one action. Kept that going, kept one action. I think that matters. Range is 60 feet, and duration is 1 minute. So this is, right, focus rank 7. So again, we're really high up. You might only take one of the two. You're going to create 5 thralls in different spaces within that range, within that 60 feet. Again, 60 feet's huge. When an enemy makes a strike while within 10 feet of a Skeletal Lancer, the Lancer deals 5 piercing damage to it. The enemy takes this damage only once per strike, even if like it was surrounded by them, so it can't take 5 from each one of them. The Skeleton Lancers have a speed of 30 feet. Their strikes have a reach of 10 feet themselves. If you do choose to command one of the Skeleton Lancers, you can actually command all of them to stride at once if you're striding with it, so you can like move your whole army, which is really cool with just that one action. And when you use Thrall Charge to order Skeleton Lancer to charge and strike, it deals an extra 2d6 damage when it's doing that strike, or at 8th rank, a 3d6 damage. Again, I like this for the same reason I liked the Blood Tentacles before. This just gives you more ways to deal damage. It's a different setup, right? That one's where they end their turn. This is when they're making strikes. So I think you can go either way with them. This gives you a lot of them, and there's a 10-foot reach, so it's even harder to position away from this. It's not a ton of damage, admittedly, right? But it's every time a creature makes a strike. Creatures make a lot of strikes. This could add up really quickly, right? They might be taking 10 damage a turn on average for a creature that's all about striking. Over 3, 4 rounds, yeah, that adds up. That's a decent amount of damage, and you're doing it to multiple creatures every round. So I think it looks a little weak when you first read about it. I think it can add up if you do it right away in your first round. And keep in mind, if they get destroyed, they are still thralls. You still get the bonus from whatever happens to them, depending on your subclass. So that's also a win. And yeah, that's it for the focus spells I wanted to bring up. Last thing I want to talk about, multi-class archetyping. You are a melee martial most of the time. Sometimes you are a ranged martial. Either way, you have amazing options of what to do here. Some of the first ones that pop in my head, I mean, again, thanks to its buff, it helps, but we've got the Magus. The Magus is fantastic. You're getting more spells on top of your spells. You're getting this, amazing new strike on top of everything else you can already do. It just lines up so well with what you want to do and who you are. All the attributes you want line up perfectly. I love that. However, there's a lot of martial options you can take with this that I think are a great choice, depending on obviously, where you put your attributes and all of that. I think another one, because it's always strong, you can go with Exemplar. You can, get a weapon icon. It's going to feel good. That's right away. And then with your weapon icon, you can buff it up. A lot of the buffs early are 4 weapon icons with the feats for that. So that can feel really strong. And of course, you can get 2 eventually over time. So really strong with that one, I think, if you're adding damage onto what you're doing, and that can be either melee or ranged. And then, yeah, you've got just a lot of other martial options out there. There's other near martials that line up well with this. Things like the Alchemist may be kind of a hard one to fit, although then you're just making elixirs. Alchemist is probably amazing as well. Gives you a support angle as a Reaper, which normally support's not your thing. You can go Inventor if you want to. That can feel really good for getting maybe the armor or something, armor or weapon. I don't know. I think there's so many good choices, it's hard for me to even list them all, and I ignored all the spellcasting ones, and they're good too. So I think no matter what you do, there's just a ton that fit this playstyle really well as far as multi-class archetyping, and of course, there's just a billion archetypes that work well too. So take your pick, grab what you like, and yeah, what do you think? Reaper, Puppeteer? What's your favorite after both these videos? I know I just have a love for the Reaper, but I love that gift style. Anyway, put your thoughts in the comments below, and as always, adventure on.